Hey guys, Mark Survive Truth. I want to try to do a really short video on this, but I want to prove a point to those who are willing to listen that you know when it comes to the Trinity, people say they believe there's one God, but you ever notice that they say, well, no one has seen God at any time, and then they say, oh, that's talking about the Father or the Holy Ghost. They'll switch. You're like, oh, we believe there's one God, but they're three distinct persons. It's because they say, well, what about the fact that it says no one has seen God at any time, which says God is invisible? And then they switch. Well, okay, that's talking about God the Father. But I thought you said you believe there's one God. Well, he's three distinct persons. You got to understand the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. They're three distinct persons. Now, they don't consider that to be more than one God. But I'm going to show you that they do believe in one God. Because all you'd have to do to prove this is all you have to do is to break the Trinity. All you have to do is prove they're lying about one member of the so-called Trinity. Like, I'm going to give you an example. This is going to appear a person who's going to say something, and I'm going to show you how, despite the fact that you can show them, and I have done this, you can show them. I've called this guy named Brother Luke, who Renee has on CES. I've spoken to him, called him, told him, and he completely dismissed it. He gets on, he has a live, I think the next day or something like that. And he says, yeah, I had one of these so-called, I think he said Gnostics or something call me. I was giving this man scripture, and he cared less about the scripture. Because he, like these Trinitarians, they want to believe God's a white man. That's all it is. They're only using the word Jew to cover for the fact that it's really just white supremacy. And by the way, when I say white supremacy, I want you guys to know, those of you who may identify or whatever, classify yourself as white, I want you to know that white supremacy is a tool that was used against many of you at one time. Because being white changed over time. If you were Polish at one time, you were not considered white. If you were Italian at one time, you weren't considered white. Then it was oh, that's right, the Southern Italians are considered white. The Greeks weren't considered white. So the idea of who's white and who's not white. The Irish weren't considered white. I mean, some people in South America, like the whole idea of white and who is white changes over time depending on who the rich elite so-called people want to use. When they're trying to kill and conquer you, they had to say that you weren't white at the time. It's only later, once you were conquered, then they're like, okay, you're classified as white now. That's typically how it goes, typically. Because they want to make you feel like you're part of the team so you can help be a sucker and go kill and conquer other people, right? That's it. Like, if you don't understand this, you can look this up. Go on to Chat GPT and say, who tell me the people who were white and who are not white but are now considered white today, and you'll see this long list. You'll see a long list. They used to have this thing called the one drop rule, and the one drop rule said if you had one drop of Negro blood, you were not considered white. This is called the one drop rule. Now, I'm going to show you something. I'm just going to prove a point. And had made of one blood all nations of men to dwell on the face of the earth. So one drop of Negro blood meant you weren't white. But God made all men of one blood. Did you know that this was the same thing? Like Hitler was less racist than America. One, race is made up. It's complete. It's a complete social construct. It's not really real. If you want to say there's something called colorism, if you want to say different people have different characteristics or different skin colors or whatever, okay, fine. Even then, though, it's not consistent. Because there are black people in Africa, so-called black people, and I say black, quotes, quote unquote, who have lighter skin than someone who would be considered Polynesian. Sometimes some people who are considered Cuban, some people who are considered, there's the Indian, Native American. This thing is such an insanity. It really is. It's such a mental illness that people have. And if you're in the world, you're gonna the mental illness. You almost can't escape the mental illness, because if you're in the United States, they're gonna do the U.S. 2020 census. In the U.S. 2020 census, what are they gonna do? They're gonna make you classify as white, black, and these other categories. You are forced. And they're saying if you do this census, they're saying it's illegal to not fill it out correctly. So the government wants to track. For some reason, the government wants to track black and white and who's in your household and what they're considered black or white. They want to track that. You know? They could just say, are you American? You know? It's stupid to send out a survey asking if people are illegal, right? But they want to track that for some reason in the U.S. 2020 census. And they say they're doing it under the guise of, well, we want to know who to help. That's not why they're doing it. That's not. They use divide and conquer schemes even amongst their own citizens. That's why they have Republican and Democrat. You know, I'm not here to get into that much, but I'm just here to point to you the bigger deception is that you guys, you believe these lies, and really all you're doing is believing God's a white man. Slapping the label Jew on it. Okay. The Black Hebrew Israelites, they don't call themselves Black Hebrew Israelites. But let's just say people who you identify as the Black Hebrew Israelites. Okay, they can say, I'm not black, but we are Jews. We're the chosen people. We're the chosen race. Because that's what they're trying to say. They're saying Jews are race. You wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't go for it. Why not? You say, well, because we don't see the evidence of the promise as we saw it with regards to the state of Israel, 1948. So you're saying that if Europeans kill other people in Europe, then all of a sudden, and then they steal some land, saying that God told us this land belongs to us, then you'll believe it, because Europeans killed other Europeans as they've done before. And what makes it even worse for many of you, and that you don't know this, is that did you know that the United States used to be considered the new Israel? Did you know that they used that same lie? Christopher Columbus he considered himself a Jew, and they considered the United States to be the new Israel. Did you know that? They said they were being persecuted, and that's why they had to come to America. And post haste, right away, they did what? Started getting slaves and started raping people. Killed, genocided people. And you guys are like, that's interesting. So glad that pattern doesn't exist today. They sure stopped all that. That doesn't exist anymore. They don't call other people savages and beasts and try to paint them all as being, sinners, and then paint themselves as being innocent people who are just trying to defend themselves. See, I realize that many of you guys don't believe the scriptures. You don't believe all is sin and come short of the glory of God. That's why you make this distinction. You make this distinction that makes no sense. I heard this person, Renee Rowland, who I'm going to show you. She did this video trying to address Young Don. And she said, he's asking this question, but she said, I don't really think he's doing, she says, I think it's all polemics. I don't think he really wants an answer. This is Renee Rowland saying, question, I don't think he really wants an answer. I just think blah, blah, blah. And Young Don brought up a very, very good point. He said, look, it says if you believe, you'll be able to do all these things. The works that I do, you do also. And greater works than these, because I go into the Father. This is what Young Don is saying. And he said, well, how can you explain that there's people who have children and other people in the hospital dying of cancer? And then Renee Rowland tries to use you're looking for a sign. You're looking for a sign. She literally takes the scriptures out and say, he's looking for a sign and it's all about being selfish. She said, Young Don said, no, Young Don, though he's deceived, he's not stupid. The problem with many of you is I really think you think other people are stupid. Like even in a worldly sense, because you believe the hype. You believe God is a white man. So of course you think you're more intelligent than the average bear, because you think, well, God's a white man. Of course, God knows all things. So therefore his chosen people must be smarter. And then they replicate the illusion for you through scheming, scamming, double dealing, secret agreements, nepotism, collusion. And you're like, yeah. That see, look at their scores. They're especially look at the Ashkenazi score. That's who they point out as being the most intelligent. So look at the Ashkenazis. Look how smart and intelligent they are. And you guys, you are so dumb. You don't see through it. And see, when they do that, hey, we're so smart, we're so intelligent. What they're saying, for those of you who consider yourselves white but can't catch on, they're saying, yes, we have a right to rule over you. You're right. And when you agree, when you buy into the lie that we're the chosen race, then you're agreeing that we have the right to rule over you. And if we're the chosen people of God, and we're a little bit closer, given that we have the same racial identity as God, let's keep it real, then why would we not be able to influence your government? Why shouldn't you serve us? Why shouldn't your tax money go to help fight our wars? Why wouldn't you go and spill blood to keep us safe? Why wouldn't our life be worth more than your life? Because without us, we're the saviors of the world, baby. Salvation's of the Jews. And you're so stupid, you don't understand that. Here's another huge contradiction. Let's say you believe, and so you said, Marcus, that was the Old Testament. Now, they're blind, for our sakes, Marcus, they're blind for our sake. I don't know if they're blind. I don't understand how they're supposed to be leading you, but okay, they're blind, Marcus. All of them are blind, by the way. So you're like, not Marcus, they're blind now. But of course, there's always an exception. But they're blind, Okay, you say, okay, all right, you believe they're blind. Okay. Well, if they're blind, where are they leading anyone to? Right? Let's say you say, okay, well, Jesus came and he exposed this whole thing. They were supposed to see him as the king. And since they rejected him, he's like, okay, you rejected it. Then you rejected me. And because you rejected me, you can't have the kingdom. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, right? So say you believe that. So now what you're believing is that, well, Jesus left, he went away. And then because they were what did they accuse them of? They accused them of being of deicide. Deicide, meaning they killed God. You heard of killing the children in the womb, infanticide or whatever you call it. You heard of genocide. These guys they're accused of deicide. They killed God. Now, that's kind of stupid because you can't kill God, who's eternal, immortal, invisible, the only wise God, whom no man can approach, whom no man has seen nor can see. But according to the Trinitarians, that's not true because they can see, handle, and approach God before, during, and after the crucifixion. In fact, God, who says, I am the Lord, I change not, has wounds in his hands, in his feet, and in his side, had his beard plucked, was spat upon, had crown of thorns. And if you read in the quote Old Testament talking about his body, like this description of being emaciated and all this kind of things that you can see his bones, and all this kind of stuff from jutting from the skin, under the skin, right? So they believe God stumbled, got tired, sleepy, hungry, thirsty, I thirst. And don't forget, why hast thou forsaken me? Don't forget that. Why? God, who cannot deny himself, said, why hast thou forsaken me? Okay? So, again, when I say this, I'm just laying the so-called groundwork of the arguments that these guys are proposing to you. And I want you to think about what they're saying. And how all these little scholars have to get together and they have to come up with some elaborate lie as to, how do we explain this away? Of course they had to invent the lie that God is three distinct persons. Of course they did. But back to the argument. Okay, so Jesus came. They rejected Jesus, and they said, well, because they rejected Jesus, then, they couldn't get the kingdom. Mind you, in this whole thing, according to your supposed grace believers who don't really believe in grace, they say they rejected him. Now, what they're telling you when they say this, I want to point out the blatant contradiction. They're saying they rejected him, meaning the Jews rejected him, as if every single person who claimed to be a Pharisee, every single person who claimed to be a Jew, every single person rejected Jesus. That's what they make it seem like. But the problem is, It says many people believed on him. Many people. Let's see. Have any of the Pharisees believed on him? Nevertheless, among the chief rulers also many believed on him. But because of the Pharisees, so many people believed. Right? Many people believed. But this people knoweth not the law and are cursed. Have any of the rulers or of the Pharisees believed on him? But this people who knoweth not the law are cursed. Nicodemus said to them, he came to Jesus by night, being one of them. And it talks about how, well, I won't get into this because it's not what I'm trying to get into, because really what I want to just say that people, some Pharisees and people who claim to be Jews believed on him. They're making it seem like, oh no, that, it was all or nothing. And mind you, these people are, they say, I'm not Calvinist. You have to, as an individual person, you have to believe. They're trying to say that the rulers have the right, somebody else who's a person, just a regular man, a sinner, they have a right to do what? They have a right to hold off. They can hold off the kingdom. If they could hold off the kingdom then, why can't they hold off the kingdom in the future? I thought you could do nothing against the truth, only for it. How did they stop the kingdom? I mean, for all your intelligence and all your identification and self-identification of being more associated with the so-called race of God, sometimes you have to sit down and think about how dumb you sound. It said you can do nothing against the truth. Let me show you this. Nothing against the truth, only for it. Remember how they were arguing? They say, well, if this be of God, then we can do nothing to stop it. Listen, for you can do nothing against the truth, but for the truth. That's really odd, because you know who said, yes, listen. I am the way, the truth, the life. So how could they be accused? I'm just going to point out for all of you guys who are so intelligent and so smart and so amazing. And you're like, well, we got to count the flesh of Jesus as God. And I'm like, but God is a spirit. God is a spirit. He's called the Spirit of truth. Even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it seeth him not, neither knoweth him. Depart from me, I never knew you, to the King, eternal, immortal, invisible, the only wise God. Whosoever abideth in him sinneth not. Whosoever sinneth had not seen him, neither knoweth him. And so that's why they got to be like, oh, well, that's talking about one of the three members. They talk about Jesus because people saw Jesus. You mean you saw the flesh that was made of a woman that was formed from the dust of the earth that could die, the mortal body, as it says in Romans 8:11. That's not God. God is a spirit. His name is Jesus. He is the first. I am the good shepherd, as many as are led by the Spirit. And the last, come, I'll show you the bride, the lamb's wife. Shepherd leads the sheep or the lamb. So he's both the shepherd and the lamb. And he says, I'll show you the bride, the lamb's wife. He took me in the Spirit to a great and high mountain and showed me that holy city, New Jerusalem. In Galatians 4:26, the lamb's wife, Jerusalem above, is free, it's mother of us all. The lamb, the bride's wife, the Spirit and the bride say, come. God is a spirit. You can't keep switching back and forth when it suits you, when it's convenient for you. When somebody who's from Islam asks you, can God die? Can God die? And then they say, well, if God died, who's running the world? Who's running things? And then you try to say, oh, it was one of the three distinct persons. It was one of the other ones, but they're co-equal, co-eternal. You can't say they're co-equal, co-eternal. To say they're co-equal, co-eternal, you have to say they're also co-immortal. But if you say co-immortal, you have to also deny the death of the man Jesus. Because immortality means you cannot die. For all your intelligence and all your association with being smart, because you think you're closer to God's skin color, because you have an idol that makes God flesh, you're awfully dumb. You're awfully dumb. You're awfully dumb. Because if you're going to say co-equal, you're going to have to say co-eternal. And unfortunately for you, the scriptures reveal that if you're going to say eternal, 2 Corinthians 4:18 says things which are not seen are eternal. The eternal God is thy refuge. And unfortunately for you, 1 Timothy 1 goes through and says, talking about Jesus as being the King, eternal, immortal, invisible. And then it says, only wise God. Only wise God. 1 Timothy 6 goes through also talking about the appearing of our Lord Jesus Christ, which in his times he shall show who is the blessed and only potentate, who only hath the immortality, dwelling in the light, which no man can approach unto, which no man hath seen nor can see. You can't, on one hand, say, oh, I see it's talking about Jesus there, and it says no man can approach and no man hath seen nor can see, but at the same time, who only have immortality, the King, eternal, immortal, invisible. But I'm going to say that there's this thing called the God-man, where I just say that God-man is one person with two natures, but I believe there's one God, and they're three distinct. But when it says no man has seen God any time, that's not talking about the Son. That's talking about the Father, or that's talking about the Holy Spirit. This is what you call, the term that you guys use is what they call gaslighting. And another way the scriptures say, this is called, some people say it's cognitive dissonance. Well, the scripture just talks about people being double-minded. Double-minded. Here's how it's double-minded. You're a person in the military. You were gone to war. You go to fight and you get trapped, and they don't know if you're alive. Come to find out, you've been in 9 months, 10 months you've been trapped. You finally got free. They rescued you. 10 months. You go home. You've been away for 10 months. You go home and you're so happy. And you go back and you're like, oh, okay, the first thing I want to do is I want to celebrate with my wife. I know she misses me. You go back home and your wife has a 5-month-old baby. She has a 5-month-old baby. Let's make it more ridiculous. She has a 2-month-old baby. She has a 2-month-old baby. You've been away for 11 months. She has a 2-month-old baby. You've been away for 11 months. You have not seen her for 11 months. She has a 2-month-old baby. And she just starts gaslighting the hell out of you. Oh, I've been faithful all along. Oh, ba, 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 ba. Oh, such and such and such. And you're so dumb, you can't even see the contradiction. This is the Trinity. You are so dumb. And this is what happens with you guys. All they have to do is get somebody and call them the expert. Hi, Dr. Fauci. You're the expert. All they have to say is, look, this has been written about in our medical journals. And since we all agree, then this is science. Right? And they declare themselves the holders and the guarders of all truth, disseminate their lies under the guise of being truth, say all are recognized, who we recognize as experts, have agreed on our truth. And therefore, if you go against our truth, we hate your speech. You should shut up and be quiet. And we're going to force you to believe what we want you to believe. This is what they're trying to do. And if you did not see that that's what happened during the pandemic, they just established something as being true. They got caught lying over and over and over and over again. And despite the fact that they got caught lying, despite the fact that they fired people, ostracized people, ruined people's reputations, took away people's license, and did not give them their license back after they were caught lying, people along the whole way of the fraud, you could not tell them anything about it being a fraud. You could not say, something's just not right. That makes no sense. Common sense dictated that it didn't make sense. The evidence actually dictated that it didn't make sense. Whistleblowers told you about the corruption. The people changed their story along the way. And then they had the nerve to say, this is the funny part. They had the nerve to say, we're moving at the speed of science. Which is to say, we're moving at the speed of knowledge. And then the person who was the front-facing person of the world, this guy named Fauci, he said, I am the science, which is to say, I am the knowledge. Now, his knowledge, his science, was proven to be fraudulent. He was proven to be a liar. It was proven that he was is financially incentivized. It is proven that he has a history of lying. It's been proven that he's had a history of getting people fired who did not agree with him, who did not go along with him. It's proven that he has the purse strings that funds the institutions who are supposedly independent. So therefore, they do not have what? They don't have the autonomy and the honesty, or like you say, the money came with strings attached to the research institutions. He has the money to distribute to colleges, institutions, and research organizations. This is all what they call a conflict of interest. And you guys are so stupid. And I say this, and I'm not saying this to be harsh. It sounds harsh, but I'm not saying it to be harsh. You're so dumb that you don't see the incentive for someone to lie to you despite the history, repeated history. And I'm not just talking about so-called white, black. I'm talking about before the definition of white came on the scene, and you people just saw themselves as being Irish, and other people just saw themselves as being whatever, British, and other people just saw themselves as being Scottish, or other people just saw themselves as being, well, we're Greek, or we're Italian, or we're French, or we're Mongolian, or we're, whatever, Lithuanian, like we're Filipino, we're, what, and these things even change throughout time. Because countries are formed, right? Countries are formed. It is crazy because you see how the borders in countries change, right? The fact that you have borders tells you you're not in quote unquote heaven, right? The fact that you have borders and there's another country on your border that you consider a threat, that tells you you're not, quote, quote, you're not in heaven. If someone can cross your border and sneak into your country and take your life of your citizens, you're not in heaven. You're not in God's kingdom. This lie, we're in God's country. You're not in God's kingdom. You may be in the God's creation. And God owns all things. But you're not God's people. You're not his citizenry. Stop attributing all the works of these devils to God. Stop claiming that God has a chosen race, that if you bless them, God will bless you. If you curse them, God will curse you. You sound like a fool. And I'm going to keep it very real with you. You sound like a white supremacist. Because despite the fact that you try to pull this little stupidity and say, well, there's some Ethiopians and you don't know about the Mizrahi and you don't know about this and you don't know about that and you don't know about the all different types. I have friends who consider themselves Jews to be black and all this. Stop the stupidity. That's like a racist country saying, I'm going to set some people as window dressing and make them so-called part of the civilization, so that anytime we do anything under the white supremacist banner, I can say, no, we can't be a racist country. We can't even be founded on racism because look, we had a black president. Look. What was there's a place called Martin Luther King Boulevard? Look. There's a place called Malcolm. Well, who's Malcolm X and who's Martin Luther King? Tell me about the Black Panthers. What were they fighting for? What was the big deal? Who's Medgar Evers? Who are all these people? What were they fighting against? Are they fighting against something that did not exist? And for you to pretend that it's been stamped out, it's not been stamped out. It's like you saying sin and being a respecter of person has been stamped out. Because let me, again, I understand that racism is just one of the divide and conquer tools. It's just one of very many. And again, if you consider or identify yourself as white, just remember, in Europe, if that's what you identify as, in Europe, the atrocities that Europeans did to other Europeans, because you can talk about the atrocities that Africans did to other Africans, Rwanda and all these kind of places, these people taking machetes and just, slicing people's head open and cutting their throats and stuff, and people, doing these things to women. Horrific stuff. We can talk about World War II. We can talk about the city of Berlin after the Nazis, quote unquote, conceded defeat. We can talk about the soldiers who came in who were supposedly the good guys, and talk about what they did to many of the German women. And these people were considered to be, quote unquote, white. And they were going in and they were doing these things to these women. So, don't, when you try to play this little racial card thing, I am telling you this from a perspective of, look, you've been duped. You've been fooled. You really do think God's a white man. You guys will sit there and look at all the pictures and paintings in the Catholic Church in the Vatican. You go to your local library, you'll go and buy one of these so-called Bibles and one of these old books, you'll go and you'll look in a museum. You can go online and look up religious artifacts. You can go in all these places and see all this stuff. You can go on church. You can go to your so-called local so-called church place that God doesn't dwell in. You can go look at the magazines, the Time magazines, the National Geographic magazines. You can look at specials on TV, and you know what they're trying to do. You know what they're trying to do. The most that they will do is they'll make God have a tan. And you know what I'm saying. They'll say, well, God kind of has a tan. That's what they're trying to do. But ultimately, when they say God in his most pristine divine form is a white man. And he has a chosen race. You can't look at the pictures in the Vatican and then look at the leadership of that fake lying sign and wonder in Israel and then say, I don't see any connection. I don't see any, nothing to see here. But that's what you guys have been doing. So when I say being blind, when the scriptures talk about being blind, it's saying you don't see things by faith. You're always looking for some stupid sign. And of course, the sign you want to see and the sign that they're trying to tell people you better see, because they made it illegal not to identify those people as being God's chosen race. They're like, are you anti-chosen race? They're saying you better see this is God. I say, whether you see it or not, we're taking your tax money. This is what the United States government and the British government pretty much have said. And what cracks me up is you guys, you don't understand that the early British aristocracy considered themselves to be the chosen race. And this is really just what they call British Zionism. But Britain wasn't always Britain. But this is really just the rich elitists figuring out a way to use the scriptures to fake Bible prophecy, and they're conquering each one of these so-called countries, and they're pretending that they're not working and collaborating together, but you know they're working together. I mean, it's so like in your face, and that's why men are blind. It's so in your face. It's so in your face. What, another thing I'm gonna point out that's in your face, because you can do nothing against the truth, and Jesus says, "I'm the way, the truth, the life." And you say you can do nothing against the truth, but they sure did a lot of stuff against Jesus. I mean, they killed the truth that day. So therefore, you guys have to say, well, we have to deny. You can do nothing against the truth. That's kind of a lie, but we're going to overlook it because we want God to be a white man. This is one of the few times that people will admit there's a white on white crime. The white man is so strong in their mind that they can kill God. And if they can kill God, God dang it, they can give God life. Because they are God. In their mind, they are God. You guys can say what you want. You think you're God. Because the only way you can do the works of God is if God is with you. And it's God working in you. That's why it says the works that I do, ye do also. So when you have people like Young Don Reborn saying, you guys, since you claim this stuff, show me, prove it. Give some say. He said, okay, forget it. Don't make it about me. Just what about some mother who's in grief, whose kid is in the oncology department, and that kid is suffering with cancer, being their body's been ravaged by cancer. And that mother is in grief. And she's been going to your so-called buildings, your churches. She's been giving money. She's got the widow's mite. She's been giving all that she has. She's been giving. She's been giving. She's been coming. She's been dedicating. She lost her husband. He's dead. She's got their child whom she loves. He has cancer. And she just wants to see the miracle. She wants to see something supernatural. And she's not doing it because she doesn't have faith. She's been there praying all night. She's been there night after night after night. She's been praying. She's told the so-called church. She's told all the members of the church. She's read the thing about how you could just lay hands and you can heal. And she's seen this. And then what do you guys do? You say, look, God Almighty, you know what God can do? God can stop the Holocaust, but God can make money off the Holocaust, right? God can't stop his chosen people from dying, his lost sheep. He said, remember, you want to talk about blind. I am the good shepherd. I will not lose not one sheep. I won't lose not one sheep. 6 million died in the Holocaust. 6 million died in the Holocaust. You think that America was behind the Holocaust, wouldn't you? The way that America's acting, you think America was behind. You think that because America's paying reparations as if they did it. Now, the same America that wants to pay reparations because white on white crime in Europe, that same America doesn't want to pay reparations for the black people who, so-called black people who are in the country. Though they promised they would pay 40 acres and a mule. They actually promised they would pay it. You know who they compensated? They compensated landowners. You know what the slave so-called landowners did? They just started another system of sharecropping. It's like another slave system of, okay, you're not a slave, but here's what it is. You're going to till the land and you got to get so much to get so much pay. And I tell you what, I'm going to set you up in a house. Now that house going to cost you so much. I'm going to take all that out your money. And they just created a horrible deal. And totally exploited those people. Then what did they do? Post haste, the slave patrol became the police. And what did they start doing? They started making sundown laws and other laws to criminalize the people who they claimed that they freed. And then they use that to make them slaves all over again. They just hid it. They hid it. And why did they hide it, pray tell? Because they hadn't really changed. They don't care about people. And what they do, and I've told you this before, if they're doing it to the people in so-called Palestine and the place that they call so-called Israel, if they're doing it to those people, if they're willing to do what they're doing to those little children over there, you better believe they're willing to do it to you. You're a fool. I know. You're like, why would I worry about that? And I'm not saying you have to. I'm just giving you a reality, quote unquote, check. And it's one of those checks, many people, they will not cash it. But you better believe they do it to you. You know how I know they do it to you? Well, when they forced you to take that injection under the guise that they hadn't been the ones all along who created the thing, which forced you to do it and said you must and threatened your job, and then took away the liability that no matter what happened, you couldn't sue them for manufacturing. That is a very, very, very dangerous precedent to be set. That's Tuskegee experiment precedent. You know, when they were experimenting on so-called black people, saying, oh, they had syphilis all along. This is what they tell you. You don't know. They lie so much you don't know. They could have given them syphilis. They could have had them come in, gave them syphilis, said, oh, we're going to treat you for syphilis. And then they pretended to treat these people. This so-called experiment went on for 40 years. The Tuskegee experiment went on for 40 years, where they were pretending to treat people, and they're actually, while having a cure, having the cure all along, let syphilis ravage their body. 40 years. Okay? So now they have a system where they're saying, we're going to say that there's something that happened in a wet market in Wuhan, and that's going to give them the ability to lock you down, isolate, divide, and conquer you from your family, make you see each other as being literally a virus, which is mean that you saw each other as a leper. This is what they did. They made you all lepers. They said you are all sick. Why would you take medicine unless you were sick? So they said you're all sick and you need this medicine, and we got the medicine for you. They told you that if you took that so-called medicine just one time, that's initially what they said. They said it would stop the spread. They said they want to do what? Flatten the curve, right? Then they said, oh, my bad. It doesn't stop the spread. In fact, you need to take 2 shots. No, in fact, you need to take the... And they had a plan. They said, we should have people take this every 6 months. Every 6 months. Then you find out people who took it, they were worse off than the people who didn't take it. They blocked hydrochloroquine or hydrochloroquine or whatever it was. They didn't like ivermectin. They vilified every other alternative. They had one thing that they wanted you to take, and the one thing they wanted you to take, it had no legal liability. After people who took it said, I took it, and canary in the coal mine, things that start happening to my body start happening right away. People who were athletes in peak condition, peak performance, it was starting to affect them, some of these people, right away. People were having all kinds of things that happened to them. And do you know what they did? They tried to shut down the communication and people telling the truth on that. And there's been whistleblowers who said that what they did, that was a clandestine operation, and it really wasn't about, quote unquote, healing anyone. It was about them putting something in your system that actually would make you sick, is what they call a slow kill weapon. And the beauty of the weapon that they say that they made, allegedly, was that it would, because of the way that it attacked the system, the immune system, because of the way that it got into your body, it would basically manifest itself in different ways, in neurological diseases and cancers and all kinds of stuff like that. So it can manifest in, oh, you got a cancer here, a cancer there, a neurological disorder here, neurological, like that's how it would impact you. Cancers and neurological, because essentially what it does is it's a Trojan horse to get into your system. And since it's a slow kill, it'll just look like, oh, you got some kind of congenital heart disease, or you got some kind of this, or you got some kind of that. And then people would go to the hospital and they'd be diagnosed as all these other things. But of course, one of the questions they want to know, are you all caught up on your vaccines? And in the back end, they were making all this money because, when they're trying to get rid of you, they don't want to be paying out all these, what do they call it? Entitlements. Social Security, welfare, blah, blah, blah. They don't really want to pay all those out, right? You become a liability at some point. So they don't want to pay all that out, and they're using all their money to fight wars and war profiteer for the the private contractors and the rich elitists, right? And when they're done with you, they don't need you anymore. You're only good as a useful idiot to be divided and conquered and exploited, right? They don't want you to be comfortable having money, feeling like you don't need for anything. You need to be in a system of desperation. Hence, the boom and bust cycles of the economy, the rug pull of the economy, constant rug pulls of the economy, orchestrated. So once you get sick and you say, well, you can't trace it back to that shot that they kept injecting in you. They said, well, now your insurance only covers so much, and now you got to come out of pocket. And guess what you end up doing? Many people end up taking it, saying, well, I guess we got to give up the house. Oh, I guess we got to do this. Oh, my baby's sick, my child's sick, so I guess I got to do this. I got to drain my 401k. I got to do this. And they get to do the great reset the monopoly board all over again, the great global reset. And now they just want to get you in a system to where you can't even get out of it. You want to do a protest like those truckers in Canada? I tell you what we can do. We can just stop. We can just call our buddies and have them stop the payments. Now imagine if they can do that with the money. Imagine that they can have programmable money. Money that expires. Money that if you step outside your house, it's geolocated and it won't even spend. Money that if anybody gives you money or tries to help you, then their money's cut off. Say you're on the run, you say, brother, help me out. And they got a proximity locator on you. And they're like, as soon as I help you or give you refuge, they're going to penalize me. My social credit score is going to go down. You're a pariah. Now imagine you trying to go against God's chosen race lie. See, if you think you're white, and you think because I'm white, these other sinners won't kill you, a sinner, you're stupid. I'm not telling you that you're a worse sinner than other sinners. I'm not saying they're worse sinner than you under the law. I'm just letting you know. This is what your Trinitarian lies have come to. This is what your chosen racism has come to. This is what you believe they're so smart and they're gods has come to. And this is what you don't understand or see in this world. It's like you're blind to the things of the world. You guys claim, oh, love not the world nor the things in the world. And then you say, except for God's chosen race. We're supposed to help them expand their borders. You're stupid. What do you call that? That's called being stupid. You don't even believe, in America, you don't even believe in giving black people 40 acres and a mule. You're stupid. You're actually dumb. I won't lose one sheep, 6 million perish? You're stupid. I am the good shepherd. Where the hell were you? If we're your people, the apple of your eye, where were you? And what's the lie people give? Well, we don't really die. We just step up out of this body. That's what Renee Roland says. What an idiot. What an idiot. Anything. This is what I said. Talk about cognitive dissonance, double-minded, unstable. You cannot remain consistent. These other people, their house will burn down and they'll be like, that's interesting. It's almost like, imagine you as a father. As a father, wouldn't you stop that thing from happening to your child? And then say, well, there you go. Did you learn from it? Did you learn from it? I could see someone saying, you're not my child. You're not my child. You can't be my child because you're the child of you're the son of man. You're child of the flesh. You're not my child. You cannot be my child. I am God. My attributes are I'm immortal, I'm eternal, and I am good. I am powerful. I am the creator of all things. I am all powerful. I am the creator of all things. Right? No sin can dwell in my presence. No sin. You are a sinner. You do not have my attributes. You have the knowledge of good and evil, but you are wicked. You're corrupt. You are not of the family tree of God. Make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit wicked and corrupt and perishable. Right? I can understand you saying, well, people who aren't the people of God, God will show them how their world is wicked, full of darkness, divided, and destruction, and how they act like beasts amongst themselves, even though they're all brother. That's the family of man. They find reasons to divide and conquer amongst themselves. They don't like to play nice with others. They find reasons because they get greedy and they come up with schemes and they collude against one another, accuse and excuse one another for filthy lucre's sake, for power, to lord over each other. And it's all about where you're at on the pyramid scheme. If you're rich and high-minded, then you're going to say, I don't need God. Why would I want to believe in a better? I got it pretty good here. But someone who may be poor, suffering, being assaulted, abandoned, betrayed, then that person, maybe if they hear the truth, they hear the truth of, look, the children of the flesh aren't the children of God. You must be born again. Seek ye, love not the world nor the things in the world. That person who's like, yeah, the world has not been kind. I was a child. They killed my mother. I watched my mother get assaulted in front of my face. They made my father watch before they killed him. It was the last thing he saw before they gouged his eyes out. They assaulted me after they assaulted my mother. They killed my mother after they got done with her, and I had to watch that before they killed me, before they assaulted me, or whatever. They assaulted me and my mother. And then, of course, my brothers were all killed. And in fact, one of the guys assaulted my brother, saved my brother. And I saw all this. I was the only one to survive it. I saw all this. I have nothing. I'm abandoned. I was on the street. I was sold in prostitution. I've been passed around, roughed up, beaten. And then when I got of a certain age, lost my beauty, they discarded me. Nobody wants me. That person hearing the gospel, truly hearing the gospel, not having some fake, phony, lying sign and wonder come to them, talking about some come in this building made with hands. No, that person, when they hear the gospel, they might just believe it. They might just believe it. They would be like, oh, what is there to love in this world? I don't even think I'm lovable. I don't even think I'm lovable. Yeah, you're right. I'm unclean. People have told me that all my life. I'm unclean. You're right. In India, there's this group of people who are considered to be the untouchables. Those are the ones who get to clean the sewers and all that kind of stuff. They're the untouchables. They got this caste system, like a pyramid scheme. In India. And of course, they're the dark skinned Indians, right? They're the untouchables. And to have the nerve of people to complain about white supremacy, and you're like, you know what system you have back in your own thing. In South America, there's some thing called, there's a saying that they have. And it's a saying about like what they call, it's something like improving the race. It's a crazy thing. I think it's in Spanish. Improving the race, or maybe it's in Brazil, I think. Um. Anyway. Mejorar la raza. Mejorar la raza. Anyway, that's not giving me what I want. But anyway, people, it's not that a rich person can't believe. Obviously, all types of people hear and believe, right? All types of hear people believe, but it's less likely, I guess, that a rich person would believe. Is what the scriptures are saying, because they trust in certain riches, right? A rich young ruler type thing. What's so crazy about what people like? A lot of people don't believe the truth because they just refuse to believe it. They just refuse. You can do nothing against the truth. They killed the truth that day. Deicide. Stupid. I mean, it's just dumb. It's just dumb. It's like there's no way around it. You can do nothing against the truth. They're like, okay. Let me show you something else. Just make it just so plain that's like you can't even approach. No man have seen nor can see. No man can approach. Basically saying you would be destroyed in the presence of God because you can't be in His presence if you're not eternal. That's what it's saying. And so the world would be destroyed in the presence of God. Even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive. Because it seeth him not, neither know him, but ye know him, for he dwelleth with you and shall be in you. That may be hard for you to understand, because You don't want to understand. But you're going to have to believe it's by faith. If I say, since you seek a proof of Christ speaking in me, you're like, bro, I could kill you right now. And I'm like, yeah, you could. You can kill the old man. That's not me. That's not me. The man that you can see, that's not me. God's called the Father of spirits, and the wind bloweth where it listeth, and thou hear the sound thereof, but canst not tell from whence it cometh or whither it goeth. So are all those who are born of the Spirit. Those who are born of God, you cannot tell from whence they come or whether they go. And if our life is hid in God and you can't approach him, and God is our refuge, and we're found in him, you can't approach us. You can't kill us. So death can't approach us. Illness can't approach us. Nothing can approach us because nothing can separate us from the love of God. Good shepherd, led by the Spirit, right? In the Spirit, found in the Spirit. We're not in the flesh, but in the Spirit. But see, you guys want to believe God got overcome by the white man, right? Because back then, I guess Italians weren't white, but now they are white. So the white man and Jews, let's face it, you got the Jews being classified as white. If you don't believe me, go and look at the Pew Research and how people identify themselves, and you'll find out that many of the people who call themselves Jews, they identify overwhelmingly as white. So stop the cap. Stop the small cap. Okay? And then you have all the paintings in the mirrors all over Europe. If you think the people in Europe are supporting people who you think are black to become the chosen race, that's another thing that proves you're not that intelligent. That's what proves you can be, your brain is so malleable. You're so Play-Doh. And then really, your brain is like, it's like clay. It can be easily formed. And that's what they know about you. But see, some of you guys, your clay has been hardened, right? Your mind's been, quote unquote, darkened, right? And you don't believe the simple things. It says, let God be true and every man a liar. It says you can't even approach the truth. You guys said, no, the white man is equal to the truth. You said the white man is truth. That's all you're saying. You're saying the white man is the truth. And you guys cannot put two and two together. You're like, why couldn't black people testify against a white man? I don't know why they couldn't. Well, because they were supposed to be dumb, stupid beasts, and their word didn't mean anything. Right? Why were they segregated? Touch not the unclean thing. Eugenics. Racial hygiene. The use of a tree in the diagram. Hitler. Like you're conveniently. This is what gets me. You are too conveniently stupid at times. The stupidity is too convenient. You know what I mean? You're too double-minded. They can't, the black Hebrew Israelites, they're fake. I can see it. It's wrong. They should just become a Christian. But they can never replace God's chosen race. Then you say, well, what about the Ethiopians? Even if they don't identify themselves as being black, there are some very dark-skinned Ethiopians. Very dark-skinned. Are they part of the so-called chosen race? Because some of them are just as dark as other Africans. So-called, right? Because there's so-called South Africa and there's so-called white people there, right? So what does that mean? If they can look that dark and be part of God's chosen race, how can you tell the so-called black people in America they're not part of it? How is it that you could do a birthright tour for people from Jersey and New York who don't speak the language, are atheists? They don't even believe there is a God. Some of these, they're like, I don't even believe there's a God at all. But I do believe he promised me some land, right? I do believe I'm his chosen people, but I don't believe he exists. You're too conveniently stupid. And it's too convenient that you say, well, the difference is that God did promise them. He promised that they could get a land and that we should all agree to protect them and their interests. And it just so happens that the same colonizing, the British, the Americans, the same people who colonized, the same elites, the same system that is colonizing and has continued to colonize, who continues to war profiteer through the divide and conquer scheme. Those just happens to be the biggest proponents and supporters of Zionism. And here's the thing, here's the kicker, guys. When they say that America has turned against them, guess what? That just means they're done with you and they're setting you up. Then you know what they're going to say to you? They're going to say, the downfall of America. This is what they're going to write. Like, they're going to be the ones to vilify him first. Because they're going to change the tide. Right now, they're trying to protect them because you're useful idiots. But when they're done with you, America, when they're done with you, because this is what they've been doing throughout all these places that they've done. They have people come in who are fake, who are not Jews. They themselves are the ones who are killing these people and causing all these issues. And they try to convince you to join them, and they're like, oh, good, that's great. They actually want what they call anti-Semitism. Because they use that to say, this is just proof that they need a place of their own. They need their own land. They need their own place. Right? They don't care about you and your grandparents that got killed and murdered and stuff. That's different. You guys can go any other way. Just disperse wherever. But for them, the way they do it is it's like me saying, when these people show up, even though they're fake, that's going to be, we want them to go in and be part of the system. And then we're going to have it so that they can be in the system. We want to make sure they can thrive in the system, be in high positions of power in the system. Then we're going to turn on the system turned on us. But who's orchestrating the system turning? They know how malleable your minds are. They can orchestrate you to do it. Just like they can orchestrate white people to think that black people are inferior. Just like some of the so-called black supremacist groups can convince black people that the white man's inferior. They know that you are gullible. They know that you are malleable. They know that you're impressionable. They know that you don't have that you're not righteous. They know that you're a sinner. They know that you're persuaded. They know that you're a respected person. They know for filthy lucre's sake, if they give you some high self-esteem and praise and throw some racial pride in it, mix it with some financial incentives, and then throw in a little, look at what that person did to you. They're all like that. If something happens to you and it's a black person, then it's indicative, and it's indicative of who they are as a people. They're not like us. That type of stuff. Therefore, we must stay away from them. They're very good at doing that. And you're very good at being a good little doggy. You're very good. They tell you to sit, shut up, heal, and attack. You're very good at that. You're very good at that. They've got Pavlov, they've got you down. They got you down. So this little system to where you notice every time, it's a group. When the so-called black people come to the country, it's a tragedy, it's a horror, it's a this and it's a that. Then when a certain group of so-called white people come to the country, they are always just running away from some horrible enemy that's trying to kill and murder them. Now, it just so happens that it's kind of interesting when you look at the history of who was trying to kill and murder them, who had the power to kill and murder them. It's pretty evident. So how was it at one point you weren't considered to be white, now you're white? If they can change the definition of who's white, you think they won't lie and say God has a chosen race? You're so stupid. And I think I'm going to be done with this. I guess people could only see half of the truth in Jesus, right? I guess God so loved the world that he only gave half of Jesus to the world of darkness, right? I guess the truth died that day, right? It says, I guess they only saw half the truth that day. It's saying the truth is a him. A him. Not a them. Not a three distinct persons. A him. To the King, eternal, immortal, invisible, the only wise God, be power and glory forever and ever. Amen. Things which are not seen are eternal. The eternal God is thy refuge. Again, you're dumb. So when I see people say, well, the church fathers, if any man have not my spirit, he's none of his. If you have the spirit, you're not in the flesh, but in the spirit. I give it to them eternal life. Things which are not seen are eternal. God's called the Father of spirits. The church fathers, Marcus. You don't understand. The church fathers. Okay.